So, our topic today, what stops you from advancing? And I'll qualify what that means. We'll go into that a little bit. I'll actually share stories. I was excited to jump on here today. I want to share. So this past week, we went on a cruise for about 10 days straight, and I was experimenting with a lot of things. One of those being is, can I completely leave both of my businesses away without touching my phone? And that was a good experiment. I dropped the ball on a couple of things, but nothing I can't recover from. But also one of the things that I talked to my wife about, we have gone on these kind of vacations, cruises and other things. Like this was the fourth one we were going to, the first time with our kids. And we were talking about some of the reflections we had on the past ones. And one of the big reflections that we had was that, we went on all these vacations, but we weren't actually fully there. We were completely disconnected. We were in our own head. We didn't actually experience the quote unquote vacation. We didn't connect with each other. And part of the intention is that, hey, we intentionally spend that time together. We connect with each other. And this is where I want to make this clear, because a lot of the times what stops her from advancing is a big lie that's out in the world. And you will see it in commercials. I even saw a commercial when I turned on the TV for the cruise ship. And there was a commercial saying, that was for a credit card with perks and all that. So he's like, you get so many perks, so many benefits that you forget about your job and you focus on the vacation. And it kind of gives you a false sense of reality. And we all we don't realize how much it runs through our subconscious, that if I can set up everything right externally, the experience will be amazing. The reality is actually very different. So I want to get you to think about a couple of things. One, know what the real challenges are internally and externally. So we usually operate on one part of the equation. And the one part of the equation that we operate on is that if I set up the right finances, if I set up my time right, and if I set up my schedule right, then everything will be good. That's your external world. If I have the right environment externally in my home, in my office and other things, that's one part of the equation. But the problem is that we all assume that if we just set up all those parts, everything will be fine when we have those experiences, whether that experience is a vacation, whether that experience is with a friend, whether that experience is with our team building a business, whatever that experience is. Now, the problem is that there's the other half of the equation that most of us don't look at. And I want to also get you to pay attention. A lot of what we're going to be doing here is figuring out what stops you. So, for example, what would stop me from being in those experiences? So for example, I'm meeting my team next week. We're speaking at an event. We're meeting for 2.5 days of strategy meetings. What stops us from being connected with each other, and what would stop me from building on the strategy? Actually, a lot of that was my own internal insecurities, my own internal dialogues that I didn't know how to deal with, my own internal beliefs, my own internal fears. Me trying to work out things in my head that I didn't know how to work out. And there was a flaw in the whole design. I was looking at one part of the picture and I was like, you know what, if I set up these experiences enough, it will fix the real problem. And the real problem was internal in nature. And also incidentally, so one of two things happens. Somebody's really ambitious. They're able to build a business or a lifestyle that really gives them a lot of those experiences, but they're not able to actually experience it with their kids, with their family, with their team, with other people. And I think a lot of people here fall into that. The other set of people fall into, they can't even build it because they're so stuck in their head. And you can kind of decide where you are there. And I want you to think about a few key areas in that whole process. How are you designing your life? Because ultimately it's going to be, this is a long-term journey. And it's not about building the next business. It's not about buying the next house or the next investment. It's about the quality of your experience and those that you care about. So how connected are you and engaged are you in your life? How purposeful are you on a consistent basis? How much can you experience your life, and how much are you stuck in your head most of the day? And also, obviously, the external parts of those are important. How much can you actually do? I love this definition from Grant Cardone about finances and money, is that money creates options. It doesn't give you happiness, but it creates options. Are you actually working on that piece? And if you are working on that, is that the only focus? Or are you sacrificing a bunch of other stuff for that? And I want you to ask yourself those questions. What is being sacrificed here? So I'll start with a few points here, and then we'll come back to the first one. And we work on this a lot, and we're going to be starting this soon, a few times a quarter, and I focus a lot on that in our community. The first one is clarity. And this is where we work on our vision. This is where we work on our strategy. This is where we work on what the hell are we trying to do? Are we operating on subconscious beliefs, thoughts, and patterns that we were taught about building the kind of life that should matter to us? Are we actually doing the work to be clear as to what life matters to us? What kind of business matters to us? What kind of sense of purpose matters to us? And that requires actually quite a bit of work. It's a simple process, but it's actually quite intensive, and it takes multiple attempts at figuring that out. And then also clarity, not just for you, but clarity with your spouse, with your business partners, clarity with other people in your life. Are they also aligned with you? And if you don't have that piece, I bet there are broken parts of it. You feel like your spouse or your business partners don't actually understand you. You feel like you're not supported by them. You feel like you're not able to communicate because there's a lack of clarity that you have. A lot of times it's easy to point fingers saying that, well, that person doesn't understand me. Well, have you done enough to communicate that? Have you done the work to be clear? Do you have a strategy that people will feel confident enough to invest that time and effort, whether it's an investor, business partner, or a spouse, or somebody else? So what does that mean? And so the first assessment is, are you clear about every part of your life? And I want to give you some categories to think about, but think about the experiences that you're creating in your life. Think about the kind of person that you're becoming as you're building this life, and think about the contributions that you want to create in your family, community, and other places. And I walk you through that framework for a reason, because it covers a big part of our life. And so as we develop clarity, one of the first things that actually happens is this thing rears its face, fear. And fear doesn't always come in full form of, I'm afraid to do this. Fear shows up in weird ways. It shows up as, oh, I'm stressed out. I'm overwhelmed. I'm exhausted. I feel frustrated. It shows up as in these cover emotions. And we don't realize how much it operates in our life. So what does that mean? That means that so for example, I'm sick right now. A big part of my energy is being taken by my immune system to repair my body. So how can I override that? One of the reasons why I can override that is because I have a purpose here. I have a sense of connection with what I'm doing. I can override a lot of what I'm doing in the background, as long as I have a sustainable plan that I can rest and do other things. Now, if you're thinking about your life and there are, like, you're stressed out, overwhelmed, frustrated, but you're not actually looking at them as, oh, these are things that are that's stopping me from doing the things that matter to me. And sometimes a lot of times it's not even related to business or work. It's a lot of times it's the fear of just being vulnerable with your partner, where you're not getting enough intimacy. A lot of times it's the fear of just not being able to be engaged with your child. A lot of times it's the fear of not feeling enough. A lot of times it's a fear of succeeding. It's ridiculous things that happen in the background of our mind. If we're not aware of it, they run our life. And what I want you to do is just consider and think about, but what are some of the things that might be holding you back, that you're not actually calling fear, but it might be things that are kind of disconnecting you from your life, that it's not making you move forward towards the right direction. And then another thing to think about is beliefs. The reason why I shared that story is that we have all sorts of beliefs, and our beliefs are based on narrative. What does that mean? So if you look at every human culture around the world, we learned how to live based on stories. The stories of our ancestors, the stories of the prophets of the religion, the stories of our parents, grandparents. And those stories help us make sense of our life. So beliefs are not always that, oh, I believe that I'm a piece of crap. It's a lot like we're telling a story in our head that we haven't subscribed to, we haven't become conscious of. So the story might go like, and this was one of the stories for me, that if I become rich, I might become corrupt. And I didn't know, I thought that was just a conscious belief. It wasn't. It was just a story passed on by multiple generations for me. That was just a very big thing in our culture. It was a misconception, but that caused me to stop to work on the business. But am I aware of it? And this is what I want you to do. So a lot of these beliefs are embedded within your story. And what I want you to think about is, how much do you understand your own story? Can you connect the dots? This is something I've talked about before, is that, for example, people who have a lot of trauma, they don't know how to connect the dots in their life. They have gaps in their memory, they have gaps in their awareness, they have gaps in connection because their mind tries to protect them. And when you go deeper into it and you walk people through that, you find out that, holy shit, it was so painful that they didn't want to be aware of that. So, and by the way, we all have trauma one way or another. It's not that actually the norm is that we do have trauma, and it's a small t trauma. It doesn't mean that stops you. It just means that you need to be aware of. So do you understand your own story, your own history? Do you understand why you made certain decisions in the past? Do you understand what the pattern was? And do you understand how that pattern is showing up now in the form of a story that your mind is telling you that might not be true at all? And if you're not aware of this, you're likely flying blind. And this is why people say that like history repeats itself, because most people don't know human history. And most people don't know their own history. So a lot of the work we're going to be doing is going deeper into your own story of understanding what are the reasons, what are the influences in your life, what are the influences that you want to create, things that you're disconnected from, what are the things that you need to face. And a lot of those things that you need to face are from your past. And it stops you from making decisions, from moving forward to live a better life, to connect better with other people. And this is where the discipline piece, discipline and what stops you. So like we make a big deal out of discipline. All discipline is what are the consistent things that you do on a day-to-day basis, which means that what are the thoughts that you wake up with every morning? Are those self-deprecating thoughts? Are those thoughts towards judging people? Or those thoughts of compassion? And you can change the focus in your thoughts saying that, oh no, I should be more compassionate, less judgmental of other people. I should be less judgmental of myself. That's a good awareness to have. But if you don't deal with the root cause of it, that's always there. And it's taking up energy in the background. So your discipline is not just things you do in terms of workout, like external things, workout and setting your calendar and other things, but it's the little things that happen in your own experience. What are the emotions that you operate under on a day-to-day basis? And emotions are not like this. You're not always on a high. It's like this. So when I talk about our experience of this vacation, it wasn't all positive, but net effect was actually very positive. We got to connect with each other. We learned about each other. We were mostly present with each other. We dealt with some conflicts, but we did a lot of amazing things that we couldn't do a few years ago. We were about 90% there. But if I were to compare that from 2 years ago or 3 years ago, we were about 20, 30% there. And that is a huge shift in your own experience. That means that you can connect better with other people. And if you're in business, if you're in life as a human being, your life is about relationships. You're either connecting with your family, friends, those that you matter to you, or you're connecting with business partners, investors, and other people. And if we don't have our shit straight, then it shows up in our energy. It shows up in the way that we say things. It shows up in the way that we communicate. And a lot of it is not in our control. This is why psychologists and therapists can actually figure out your patterns very quickly. Your body language will give you away very quickly because you don't actually have a lot of control over the subconscious processes. You have control over how you design the thoughts and emotions and your life, right? But you don't have control over the day-to-day. What happens if you haven't dealt with the root cause of it. So what does that mean? That means we're not just looking at discipline in terms of setting up your calendar, while those are important, or your workout routines or other things. We're looking at discipline in the way that your thoughts function, in the way that your emotions function, in the way that you connect with other people. How are people reacting to you? Why are they reacting a certain way? Why are people distant from you? Why are people connected with you? This is awareness one-on-one, but now you can act on that. Now you can act on, oh, okay, so this allowed me to connect better with people. This allowed me to have a better experience of my life. This didn't. And the last one I would say is a resilience mindset. And this is the big lie that's kind of connected to that big lie that's sold to us, is that life is about creating so many positive experiences that it overrides the negative. Now there's a flaw in that thinking. We don't actually have a lot of control about what happens in life. We have control over our own thoughts, emotions, if we work on the causes and our own behavior. But we don't know what the next person, even the person closest to you, will change in their behavior and their thoughts. We don't know what happens in the bigger economy. We need to pivot with what's actually happening. So the resilience part comes in as that, no, we're not asking for things to be easy. We're asking for us to develop the mental resilience to deal with things. And the reason why I'm stressing on mental resilience is because most of what we do is actually mental in nature and emotional in nature. They're not physical in nature. But even physical things are mental and emotional in nature. If you talk to athletes, they will tell you a lot of what they do is related to their mind. It's not related to their body, how they develop that. So understanding that there are always challenges in life. There are always ups and downs. So for example, when I went on this vacation, I was actually expecting some things to go wrong, and I was okay with that. I was expecting some parts of my business to not function very well. I was expecting that we wouldn't have a great time in some parts. I was expecting that there's a possibility that we're going on a cruise ship with 9,000 people, somebody will get sick. And we did. But it's possible. Now, I'm not, when I say expecting, it doesn't mean that I want that to happen. It just means that I'm okay with that happening. I just need to learn to deal with that better. And the trajectory, that way it goes, is that this is a leadership model, that as your responsibilities get bigger, the problems get bigger. So if you're not developing a resilience mindset, today you're dealing with hundreds of thousands. Tomorrow you're going to be dealing with millions of dollars, billions of dollars. Today you're dealing with your family. Tomorrow you're going to be dealing with a lot of employees. Today you're dealing with a few employees. Tomorrow you're going to be dealing with the whole community. If you don't have that worked out, you will freak out. So a lot of leadership is about building that. How do we build that? By being part of these groups, by thinking through our lives better. This is why we need better leaders. A lot of our leaders freak out because they assume that if they get to a certain position of authority or something else, their life will get better. No, their challenges will get easier is what I mean. But they don't. They actually exponentially grow. It's just that they need to challenge themselves to grow into that identity. So you need to challenge yourself into that identity. What are your roles in your life? You're a father, you're a mother, you're a business owner, you're a husband, you're a wife, you're a child. How are you stepping into these identities? You're a human being. And ultimately, all these connect back to our potential. Everybody's potential is different. Are you actually unleashing that by being aware of all these areas? And so consider these areas and what can you actually deal with? A lot of the work that we're going to be doing is about implementation. This is not about information. So think about these areas this week. And on Thursday, we're going to go deeper into them in your own life and find out, like, what are the changes you need to make?